everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know those classic stories we all grew up with, like Jack and the Beanstalk? Well, today we're taking a closer look at those and Jack the Giant Killer. Because we were thinking, is Jack really the hero we all remember?
It's funny how those childhood tales can seem so different when you look back at them as an adult.
Right. You start to think about it, and Jack's decisions might not have been the most ethical.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be diving into. Is Jack a hero, or is he something else?
Yeah, is he a villain? A criminal?
Possibly. To start, let's lay out what Jack actually did that would get him in trouble today.
Well, he kills giants. In both stories.
Yes, and in Jack the Giant Killer, he's supposed to be this big protector, but it's a lot. He goes on a giant killing spree. Doesn't just stop at one.
Right, he just keeps going. And that brings up the question, was he really acting in self-defense every time? Or was there something else motivating him?
Like what? Revenge? Greed?
Maybe. Because we can't forget about Jack and the Beanstalk. He doesn't just kill the giant there. He steals a bag of gold.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And a hen that lays golden eggs. And a harp.
Wow. So he makes out like a bandit. Which brings up the whole question of property rights back then. Even if we say the giant got all that stuff in a bad way, which the story doesn't even say, does that mean Jack gets to just take it?
It's a tough one, right? Because part of you thinks, well, if he stole it from someone else in the first place, it's almost like it's okay for Jack to steal it. But then again, taking the law into your own hands is not usually the best way to go.
Right, exactly. And it's even more complicated when you think about the fact that the giant's wife was actually nice to Jack.
Oh, yes, she was.
She fed him and gave him shelter. So basically, Jack's stealing from her husband behind her back after she helped him out. Kind of messed up.
Yeah, it is. And that part always makes me wonder, does the fact that Jack is poor and desperate mean his actions are okay? Or does it just make them a little easier to understand?
Right. It's a classic question. Does being poor give you the right to steal? These stories are so interesting because they make us ask these tough questions, even though they are about magical things.
They really do. And it isn't just stealing, right? There's also the whole thing where Jack chops down the beanstalk with the giant still on it.
Yeah.
Leading to, well, his death.
And that really makes the whole self-defense argument fall apart. Was Jack really in danger when he chopped it down? Or is he just trying to get rid of the giant and keep all the treasure for himself?
That makes Jack seem less like a hero and more like a...
Criminal.
Yeah, a criminal.
Yeah.
But before we decide that's it, maybe we should try to see things from the giant side for a minute.
That's a good point. We are only getting one side of the story after all, and it's Jack's side. What if the giants weren't really the bad guys?
What if they have their own culture and their own reasons for doing things? We never hear their side.
We don't. And these stories were told by humans and passed down for a long time, so they probably changed over time. It makes sense the giants would be the villains in the human version of the story.
It's like history's written by the winners, right? What if the giants were just different from humans? What if that fee-fi-fo-fum thing wasn't even a threat?
Huh. Like, what if it was just a normal giant greeting?
Right.
That's interesting. Makes you think about how easy it is to think something is bad when it's just different. We see it all the time, even today.
Yeah, we do. And if that's the case, then Jack doesn't look like much of a hero. He looks more like, well, he was attacking someone for no reason.
Maybe even worse. It makes you wonder if we are celebrating a hero or someone who hurt an entire culture just because they didn't understand them.
Which actually is a lot like things that have happened in the real world when you think about it.
It definitely makes you think twice. Like, are we just believing the story we've always heard? Or are we missing something?
And are we ignoring something bad just because it's a story we like? And Jack is supposed to be the good guy.
That's what makes these deep dives so great. They make us think about things in new ways, question things we thought we knew.
And realize that good and evil, it's not always easy to tell who's who.
It's definitely not as simple as these stories make it seem.
Definitely not. And that's where things get really interesting. And maybe a little uncomfortable.
For sure. Makes you wonder if Jack is even telling the truth about the whole thing.
And how much of it we just believe because we want to. Because we like the story. We like heroes.
Right. We like a good guy and a bad guy. Makes it easy. But, like you were saying, what about the giants?
Even if they are different, Jack still killed them.
Yeah.
And not always to protect himself.
No, not always. And the way he gets rid of the giant in Jack and the Beanstalk, I mean, chopping down the beanstalk while he's still on it, That's brutal.
Yeah, there were other options. He could have just climbed back down and been fine.
Exactly. So why didn't he? Was he scared? Did he want all the treasure for himself?
Maybe he just wanted to make sure the giant couldn't come after him.
Could be all of those things. I mean, even if the giant wasn't a good guy, what Jack did is still a crime.
Yeah, he can't just kill someone like that.
Yeah.
But these stories, even though they're made up, they make you think about the real world too.
Definitely. Makes you think about how sometimes people use violence just because someone is different. They say it's a threat, but maybe it's not.
It's scary how easy that is to do. It's like Jack and the Giants all over again. Makes you think, are we the giants sometimes?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, are we always the good guys? That's something to think about. And that's why we do these deep dives.
It's not about just hearing an old story again. It's about thinking about it in new ways.
And realizing that sometimes things aren't as simple as good guy versus bad guy.
It makes you look at things differently, even stories you've heard a million times.
For sure. And that's what makes them so interesting. You can keep coming back to them and finding something new.
I like that. Okay, so where does all this leave us with Jack? Is he a hero or is he a villain?
I think he's both, which is what makes it so hard. He did some good things, but also some really bad things.
I guess it depends on how you look at it. But that's what's so cool about this. There's no right answer.
Exactly. It's all about your perspective. And that's probably the most important thing we can take away from all of this. These stories we all know, they can still surprise us.
We just have to be willing to look at them in a new way.
And remember that there are always different sides to every story. And maybe what we think is bad is just different.
Like that fee-fi-fo-fum, maybe it really was just a friendly giant greeting.
Maybe it was. But you know what? It also makes you think. What would you do if you were Jack? Makes you think. What would you do if you were Jack?
Oh, wow, that's a tough one.
Jay.
Giant.
Yeah.
It's treasure. Everyone thinks you're a hero. Who knows what you'd actually do?
Yeah, it's easy to say what's right and wrong when you're just reading a story. But if you were really there, it's different. I mean, everyone wants to be safe. Everyone wants money. Everyone wants to be the hero. But what happens when you want those things too much?
Right. It's easy to judge Jack when we're just sitting here talking about it. But maybe we would make the same choices he did.
Maybe. I mean, that's the point of these stories. They make you think about yourself, too. What would you do? Where do you draw the line?
It really is like a test. Would you still do the right thing even when it's really hard?
Exactly. That's why these stories are still so popular. It's not just about giants and magic beans. It's about being human.
And I think that's what makes them so cool. They aren't just for kids. They make adults think, too.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, what do we think about Jack? Hero. Villain.
I don't know. He did both good and bad things. Like a real person.
I think that's the best answer. He's complicated, and maybe that's the whole point. There isn't always a good guy and a bad guy.
It all depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Like we've been saying this whole time, these stories we think we know, they can still surprise us, make us think about things differently.
And that's why we love doing these deep dives. It's not just about learning stuff, it's about asking questions.
And thinking for yourself. So next time you hear that fee-fi-fo-fum, remember there might be more to the story.
Maybe the giant was just saying hello.
Right. And remember, there's always more than one side to every story.
And even the good guys mess up sometimes.
Well, this has been an awesome deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how much there is to talk about, even with stories everyone already knows.
Yeah, it's been fun. Hopefully everyone listening learned something too.
And hopefully it makes you think about things in a new way.
Yeah.
Question things? Keep learning. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.